My name is Neil Gupta. I serve as the Director of Secondary Education in Ohio, the state of Ohio, in a district outside of Columbus, a major city in Ohio, our capital. And our school district is 10,000 students. So I oversee about 5,000 students. I have 7 school buildings that I oversee. I have principals in each of those buildings, and they report to me. But I have a superintendent and assistant superintendent above me also. And our district has seen a lot of growth. I don't know in your districts if you know their schools and the size, the enrollment of the students might be decreasing. Ours is increasing by a lot. We have a lot of students coming to our district. Our school district maybe 15 years ago was all wealthy students, all rich students from rich families, and they were all white. All the students were white Americans. Now we're seeing more students come in. They're coming from different countries. We're having a lot of different race, and then we're having a lot of different economics. We're having a lot of poor people come. So our staff hasn't turned over. They're used to working with wealthy white students and families, and the tendency is that they continue to sometimes teach that way. They think that way. They believe that all students have technology in their homes. They believe that all students are coming from the same religion, and when we have different holidays and different religious ceremonies and holidays that come, they forget that. They don't realize that. So they make hard assignments and quizzes and tests on those days. And so 5 years ago, our district said, we can't continue to have that. We have to have more empathy. And so we made that a district goal. So most districts, maybe your district, has reading goals and math goals and science goals that look at the academics, but we 5 years ago said we need to have an empathy goal. So the first question is what is empathy? I think that I'd like to start there and just open it up and ask maybe for 1 or 2 people to share how they would define empathy. Is that possible? Can we have unmute somebody that might be able to say that, or you can put it in the chat box?
Okay, Doctor. Okay, Muhammad, can you share the doctor's screen, Muhammad?
Yes, okay. Go on, Doctor.
No, can anybody share? Does anybody have a definition for empathy? I see somebody saying, trying to put myself in the other shoes. That's good. So another definition somebody said is understand other emotions. And that's actually very good. I like that. That's a great definition. We have to understand where people are. So during this pandemic, for example, there's a quote that's going around that says, people are saying we're in the same boat right now. We're not in the same boat. We're in the same water, the same turbulent water of this coronavirus, but we're not in the same boat. Every house is reacting differently. And so it's important that we realize that in my home, for example, we have five or six laptops for four people, my husband, my wife, and my 2 boys. Everybody has their own laptop. We have TVs everywhere. We have a lot of space in our house. There's a lot of food in the kitchen, and everybody can go to a quiet room in the house and get into a Zoom meeting to meet with a teacher if they need to. But not every family has that right now. And so for me, staying at home is a luxury. Maybe for other families, it's not. It's very difficult. The space may be hard. There's not enough food. And so how we respond to the academic needs of our students isn't the only thing we should be thinking about. We have to think about what's happening in their homes and help to understand that so that we can have that empathy. So I'm going to share some things with you. I'm going to share my screen. Part of what I wanted to share, and I'll share this as we go along, and I can share this presentation with you. I'll put the link at the bottom as the last thing before I leave, so everybody can have it. But what I want everybody to know is I'm a school district administrator, and then I'm not sure if you're familiar with ASCD. ASCD is located in the United States. It used to stand for the Association for Supervision of Curriculum Development. So the idea of what's happening in our classrooms. That's changed. We now do a lot more with ASCD. We talk a lot about instruction. We talk about assessments. We also talk about the whole child. So the whole child, I put a link in here so you'll be able to take a look at it later. But this whole child talks about 5 aspects, and this is the website that you could go to. You might be members of ASCD, and if you are, that's great. If you're not, this is a great wealth of information for you to get on how to be a great educator. When I was first a teacher, this magazine that came about once a month was phenomenal. All the speakers that I hear about that I wanted to meet, they're all writing in this journal. And when I went to these national ASCD conferences, I got to meet them face to face, and through social media, through Twitter, I was able to connect with them and even learn more. So I really would say that if you want to become a better educator, then you need to join the ASCD. So they look at 5 areas right here: healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. They would say that those are the 5 things that need to happen to wrap around the whole child. We can't just look at that student from the academic end. We have to make sure are they healthy? Are they receiving nutrition? Does your schools, so in your schools right now, do you have plans in place that you're thinking about making sure if we're in coronavirus or not, that they're receiving good nutrition? And we worry about that. That was the first thing we worried about with the coronavirus was what's going to happen to our kids that come to school sometimes only to have a meal. And so what about breakfast for them? And what about lunch? And how can we continue supporting that? What are the healthy habits, not just in health class, but in all the classes? And then the second one is, do they feel safe? So safe is a different couple things. It's not just physical safety is one of them. When they walk into school, we want to make sure, no bullying is happening. We want to make sure that they are feeling like they're not going to get, picked on by the teacher, by the students. But also, are they emotionally safe? Are they safe to share their feelings? Do you have time built into your day for that? Do your teachers spend some time? We have something called, and I'll talk about this, morning meetings. We believe the most important thing in the morning is to spend time talking to students and helping them in grades kindergarten through the 12th grade about spending time on helping them to identify what their emotions are. I think students used to get that at home. Sometimes, as I'm Asian Indian, and we weren't allowed to talk about our feelings at home. If I'm unhappy at home, I'm not allowed to tell mom and dad I'm unhappy. I have to just do what they say. So I never had a chance to talk and share what my feelings are. And if I'm having a bad day, now we have to be able to help students to have that voice and share that. The third one is, are they engaged? Are they engaged with the schoolwork? Are we giving them interests that they're interested about? Do they feel supported when they're struggling? Do they feel supported, or do they feel like the teacher's just not paying attention to their specific needs? And then lastly, are they feeling challenged? And that's not just for our gifted students, that's for all students. Are they feeling challenged that they can do that work? So, definitely take a look at that. When I think about the word empathy, and I think about everything, I make it my goal. So as a district administrator, when I go into schools, I make it my goal to say good morning to students. And they have their earbuds in, and they're listening, and they're looking down, and I want to look at their face, and I want to smile and say good morning to them. I want to be that smile to them, that first thing that they see. And I realized that they don't always do that. Maybe they woke up in a house and they didn't have mom and dad already went to work, and so they're waking up by themselves, and they walked to school, or they took a bus and didn't talk to anybody. So I could be the first person that says good morning to them. So one of the things that you know, I think about when I make it my goal is there's a word. We say good morning. In America, we say good morning, and then you say good morning back. And it's good. It's you know, it's after a while, people don't think about that, and they don't feel fresh with it. But there's a word in Zulu, the Zulu tribe in Africa, and they use this word sayabona. And sayabona translates to mean I see you. So think about that. You're saying, you're waking up in the morning, or you're greeting somebody, and they're saying, I see you. And I thought, you know, that kind of sounds fun. I see you. I notice you. I notice that you're there. But look at the response that the person gives. If I am in the Zulu tribe and I say, I see you, sayabona, the response back isn't, well, I see you also. The response back is, sanabona. Because you see me, I exist, or I am here. And that is powerful for me when I think about that word right there. Because you see me, I exist. And we have to do that for our students every day. And we have to do that for our staff. If you are principals, how are you doing that for your staff? That they're also feeling that way. We pay them money, they're adults, but we also have to notice that they also come in with needs, and maybe they had a hard day the day before. And are we checking in on them? Right now, are you checking on your teachers? Or when you meet with your teachers, are you just talking about what needs to be done with the academics? Or are you taking the time to say, how are you doing right now? And maybe you're following up with a couple of those teachers that you're concerned about. That's important. Make sure you're doing those. So we talk about this idea about culturally responsive practices. These culturally responsive practices, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but these culturally responsive practices say we are going to worry about the culture of our school, and we're going to be the ones that co-create the environment of the school, and we're going to create learning opportunities for what that school looks like. We build the culture for that. And what I think about is I think about a tree, and the tree has roots. It has a tree trunk, it has tree limbs, and it has fruit. And so when we think about the whole child and we think about empathy, I think about this tree, and I think about that we have to have educators as activators. If they're activators, they're the ones who are at the root level. They're the ones who are giving nourishment to make this tree come alive. Now, the interesting thing is nobody sees the root. The root's underground. So some of that work has to happen underneath. And if you don't have if you don't have fruit going on in your school, then you don't look at it and just say, we don't have fruit. You say, what's going on in the roots? So we'll talk about educators as activators. We're going to talk about educators as leaders. Then we're going to talk about students as activators and leaders. So it's often that we say in our schools, our teachers are doing this, our teachers are doing that, our teachers are doing that. And I would challenge you to say, what are your students doing? And then the question is, are they just listening and learning? And when the teachers do something, or are you empowering them so that they're the ones that are then saying, I can do that also. I want to be the ones that help create that culture for my school and help lead my peers. One of the things that we talk about is this idea about mindfulness. We talk about the idea of just slowing down the day. Our teachers talk about that. I don't know about in your schools, but in our schools, not all schools in the United States, but in our elementary, we have recess. You know, where students go outside and they play on the playground. We have that in middle school also. For grades 7 and 8, we have recess, a chance for students in the middle of the day after lunch to be able to go outside. And that's important. It's important for students to have play. I would say that if I could build my own school, I probably would say we need to have that in high school also. I think our 12th grade students need time. I need time to go outside and take a walk and just have time by myself. And so maybe you can't do that in your school. You don't have a playground. You don't have the ability to do that. But maybe during the school day, before math, before we go into science class, do we pause? Do we stop and allow students just to have an ability to sit and just listen and think and meditate? And that's important. We're doing that in our schools. We're allowing students to have breathing exercises that help them to just bring down all the things that are around them and to really make some sense with focus. The other thing is Ohio State University. If you know about Ohio State football, college football in the United States is big. And so I live 20 minutes away from Ohio State Buckeyes football. They have the Kirwan Institute. You can Google search the Kirwan Institute, and they provide actually modules. They provide learning lessons for you on how you can think more about empathy, how you can think more about mindfulness, how you can think more about what are our actions and how that is perceived with others. Sometimes we say words that we didn't mean that other people pick up on, and they think that we're being negative. Maybe we didn't mean it that way, but we have to watch our words. We have to watch how we say certain things. We have to watch how we communicate with our families. The next one is Harvard. Harvard is another college, and they have something called the implicit bias training. So do your teachers have implicit bias? So there are tests that you can take, and they're free, that you go online, Google search Harvard implicit bias, and you'll see all the list there that has, do our teachers have bias towards any of these? Maybe gender. Maybe they're treating their boys differently than their girls. And the implicit means they don't realize they have it. So we at one of our staff meetings, we told the teachers to use their laptops, go somewhere in the building and take a test, take any of the tests they wanted to take. And they didn't have to share the results back with us. This is confidential for them. They didn't have to share it with us, but we wanted them to start thinking about, maybe they don't think they have a bias towards a gender, but this test will help decide and determine if they do. And then just being conscious of it is sometimes a lot. Race, weight. How about their weight? How about are we treating people different based on that? Disabilities, age, gender, those come into play. We've spent time on poverty simulations. So this is an example of if this happens in your area, but we went through, we connected with some different nonprofit organizations, and they helped go through a simulation of what is it like to live in poverty. And you see that there's these teachers that are around a circle, and at first it doesn't feel like a simulation is going to give you these feelings of what it feels like, but it does. I found out when I've done it 4 times now, and I realized quickly, I don't care about school when you have to worry about food. You don't care about your math homework when you have to take care of your baby sister. If mom and dad are at work and you're getting dinner ready. So it helps us to understand what is happening with all of our students. Here's some different resources that our district has read. There's a book on building equity. You'll see one on causes and cures. There's a magazine called Teaching Tolerance. That's a magazine that comes out each month. And then Huda Essa, you all need to follow her on social media. She wrote this book called Teach Us Your Name. And it's important because in America, we don't really pay attention to how to pronounce the names correctly of our students, and it matters. It matters that we use the proper name for them and give them dignity and understand their culture. And so here's that tree again that I talked about, and how we have to think about the roots and how we have to think about the things. When we get to know our kids, if I were to ask you, do you know who your kids are? Do you know what their likes are? Usually people will say things that are at the top of this tree. I know that they like art, or I know they like to cook, or I know they like sports. But those are only things that are at the very top. They're not very deep, are they? When you say, oh, I've talked to them and they've told me these things. But it really takes time to go down to the depth to say, do you know how much they are in tune with spirituality, or what they think about the world around them? What is their definition of family, and what does family mean to them? When you start asking those deep questions, you really start to build true relationship. The top of the tree doesn't necessarily build strong relationship. It's the things that are at the bottom. And so we're trying to help and say, don't just only have a view of each child at the top, but really get to a place where you're starting to ask students about things that are at the bottom. So look at this question at the bottom. Deep, I'm looking at deep. How did you grow up believing it was said at birth? So what are some beliefs that you have about how you were born, and what is life supposed to be like for you? There's another opportunity that I do every year, and it's called Shadow a Student. So if you're a principal, if you're a district administrator, I'm in schools every day, and I walk into classrooms in and out, maybe for 5 minutes in a classroom or 10 minutes for a classroom. But I challenge you to spend one day with a student and do exactly what they're supposed to do. So if there's a science lesson, you do the science lesson. If there's a test, you do the test. Here's things that I realized. It takes sitting down in the seats all day long. I've forgotten how hard that is. I've forgotten how hard it is to not just get up and go to the bathroom and have a coffee. I forgot that I oversee curriculum, and there's a lot of things that we talk to our teachers to do, but this is a chance for us to see if they're really doing it. And if they aren't doing it to the depth level, I noticed when I took a couple tests, the questions weren't very deep. But what I realized was that's not the teacher's fault, that's my fault. We need to go back and do a better job in training our teachers to create engaging lessons, taking time to design those lessons and make them engaging for our students. So take that day. You'll find out that it's important, and your teachers also will have a higher respect for you also, to remember what it's like. We also survey our students. We use this instrument called the Panorama Survey, and this Panorama Survey we give to our students in grades kindergarten, I think it's second grade. We give them for our 8-year-olds to our 18-year-olds, and they take a survey in the fall, then they take it again in the spring. And we're looking at things that are like teacher-student relationships. So do the students feel like that they have teachers that care for them? And then we take a look at things like sense of belonging. And you'll see that we've made some strides, we've made some gains in some of these areas, and in other areas we've dropped. We found out that some of our subgroups, our students with disabilities, they say that they have a great sense of belonging. We found out that some of our students that are poor don't have a sense of belonging, and so we have to do things about that. This data helps us to make those decisions. We also, one of our elementary schools, I'm going to show you a video, one of our elementary schools, they wanted to deliver books to kids. Usually we spend time and we wait for school to come, and then we give the books to the kids when they're at school. This school said, let's get the teachers to get on a bus, a school bus, and go to the neighborhoods of where our kids are. And just some of our teachers going to those neighborhoods where they normally don't drive and see where they live meant a lot. You'll see this student, I'm going to show you this video, the student receiving the book. It's not about the book. You'll see the parent in the background. The parent really appreciated that the teachers took the time to stop and say hello to their child. That's what's important.
It's okay. It's wonderful.
So at first she was nervous.
I came here today to celebrate with you. This is for you.
Look at how the whole family is at the door, because that doesn't happen. We don't do that very often. You know, we spend a lot of time and we have parent-teacher conferences, and we tell our parents to come to our school. And the parents that don't come, we say they just don't care. We think that they just don't care about schools. When in fact, they just need this invitation. We found out later that this parent started coming to parent-teacher conferences after. Do you see in the pictures, this girl is about to cry? That's important. She didn't have that sense of belonging. She didn't know her teachers cared about her that much. They cared for her, but she didn't know that. She didn't feel that. And now she does. And that's what's important for us to be able to do. Now we can teach science and social studies. So here's that, I was talking about morning meetings earlier. Every morning, our elementary schools, and now our middle schools are starting to do this. Our students in grades 6, 7, and 8 are spending time each morning to say, let's begin the morning and go over how to help students to talk about their feelings, share something personal about themselves, learn something about their classmates, learn how to communicate with one another. When they do that in the morning, it makes the day much better. Our teachers have said discipline has decreased. Students have learned how to just take care of one another and care for one another a lot better when those things happen. Chiamanda, if you've looked at her, she's done a TED Talk. So go back and watch her TED Talk. And she has a TED Talk called Beware of the Single Story. Very often, people will, and maybe you and your teachers in your classrooms or somebody will say, oh, this student, that person likes to read, and that person likes to play sports. And they only identify based on one thing. But my own son, he loves 10,000 things. He loves to play football, but he also likes to cook. He likes to take pictures. And so if the teacher only said he's a football player and that's it, then she really doesn't know who he is. And it's important that we really don't label our students with one thing, but we really get to know them and are careful to make sure that we give them the proper respect of knowing everything about them. These are just a couple of our pictures. We are also, we're in a very suburban district, which means that we are near outside the city. And our students only sometimes grow up only knowing what that feels like to be in that place. So we have students, we have other school districts near us, about an hour away, and one is out in the country. And you'll see that you know, this girl's with a fish right there, and the other kids are doing bows and arrows. Our students don't know that. Our students don't. There's no lakes or you know, ponds where we are. So some students had never fished before. So we wanted to give them an opportunity of what that's like. And then another city is in the city, in the middle of the city. And what does that feel like to live inside it and be in the city? And so we went ahead and took our students there. And then we have those students, we invite those students to come to our school to see what a day is like, to build relationships, to understand maybe when they go to college, they're going to meet students that aren't like them. And how are they going to help to identify with that? I'm going to finish with this. There's a fierce tribe in Africa, the fiercest tribe ever. They're the most ruthless tribe that you can ever meet. And it's interesting that when they greet each other, they have a special greeting. And this is their greeting. It starts out with, how are the children? And then they say, all the children are well. And what I love about that is that it means if the children are well, then the village is well, right? That's how we really feel. In my school district, if my schools are going well, the community is going well. If my students are doing well, my classroom and my school are doing well. And so we really have to make sure that we're checking in on our students and making sure that they're doing well. And I challenge you to find ways to do that. So I'm going to stop the screen now, and I don't know if you have questions for me.
Great presentation, Dr. Now, thanks for your great effort. Now, are there any questions, dear guests? You feel free to unmute yourself and speak with Dr. Nell.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let me now talk about what's, is everybody, are your students in your schools right now, or they're home working remotely?
Home working remotely.
Okay, so, with this last, remaining month, at least that we have for school, I'm going to suggest to all of you that we think about the ability for you to check on your teachers. Please check on your teachers if you're a school leader. It's important right now that we have just, sometimes you set up Zoom meetings like this, and all you're going to do is just ask your teachers, how are you doing? Maybe a face-to-face phone call. Everything, some kind of phone call individually, with each person. I think that has to happen. Secondly, I want you to think last year. Go back to teachers. I want you to go back to last year in the month of May, in this last month of school. And maybe you had a lesson that you loved doing. And you really enjoy doing. I had, when I taught high school math, I enjoyed us working on a project where the students built a replica of their bedroom, for proportions. I want you to still figure out how to make that happen. Find out whatever your favorite lesson is that the kids at the end of the year, the students at the end of the year said, I loved that lesson that you waited till the end on. And I want you to figure out how to make it work. Okay? Don't give up on that. Make sure you're giving those opportunities for your kids. Don't leave the year exhausted and without them having that great ability.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gupta, for your great presentation. We're honored to have you as our guest today. Thank you very much.